Hello, and welcome to Disinfect, the podcast where we air out the worst songs ever recorded. Developed and co-hosted by me, Matt Deal, and co-creator and host at large, Morris Bernstein. So today we're actually returning to the scene of the crime. The first episode of Disinfect was on the worst cover of Joy Division's Love Will Tear Us Apart, which we unanimously agreed was Paul Young's really bad version. I mean, again, offensive. I think it caused me adolescent trauma. And so, you know, we're definitely in love with our own voices and our own opinions, as clearly obvious. But we thought, you know, just to check ourselves, we would go to the experts. So this is kind of a special edition where we've interviewed actually kind of experts in primary sources, people that actually make music, talking about whether this is the worst Joy Division song ever. So we talked to...
Did you say worst Joy Division cover ever? Because you said worst Joy Division song ever.
Okay, well, it is the worst Joy Division song because it's the worst cover of Joy Division.
Right.
We're not tired at all. We're not exhausted at all. We went to Steve Albini, the iconoclastic recording engineer and musician with bands like Shellac and Big Black, and a huge Joy Division fan.
And Nirvana, right?
And then I also... What's that?
Nirvana.
He recorded Nirvana.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. And PJ Harvey, Page and Plant. I'm trying to think who else. A lot of people. A lot of really important musicians. And then I also had an extensive conversation with Moby, the landmark electronic artist. Joy Division is a huge influence on him. So much so that I believe he bought some original gig posters. So we figured he'd have some unfiltered thoughts on the matter. And then...
Arthur Baker.
Yes, Arthur Baker's actually worked with both Paul Young and New Order.
New Order, yeah.
So we're going to the meat there. You know, we're putting our opinions to the test. Mm-hmm. Arthur Baker's also a genius. He's kind of one of the great producers of the... he really created electro, I think. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I think all these guys, Steve Albini, Moby, Arthur Baker, they actually changed how we hear music. And so I want to hear what they have to say about Joy Division and Paul Young and the awfulness. So we will take it away and we will let the experts help us disinfect. First up is Steve Albini. What do you think of the idea of a hack R&B singer attacking Love Will Tear Us Apart in the worst, most cliched 80s way possible?
I mean, any idea is worth hearing. I think Love Will Tear Us Apart is would be uniquely suited to a faithful country and western interpretation in my mind.
I've always wanted to hear Sinatra do it.
Missed the boat on that one. You know, bad music doesn't affect me that much these days. It's so easy not to have to hear it that, given the way that we can each individually curate our listening, I'm so rarely exposed to terrible music, and if I am, it's such a brief thing that it doesn't bother me. Terrible music doesn't bother me particularly anymore. We've never had a period where it was all good. You know, there's always been awful music.
And now we're going to hear from the artist known as Moby, who lets us really know how he feels about Joy Division and Paul Young, and whether it is indeed the worst cover of Joy Division ever. He also talks about synthesizers. Take it away. We're going to do a little bit of a social experiment.
Okay.
Okay?
I mean, I'm assuming it's Paul Young. So I know it's Paul Young. Love Will Tear Us Apart. I mean, from the first three notes, I used to work in a record store. If there's anything I know, it's obscure-ish 80, especially like Paul Young, you know, Lady in Red, Paul Young covering Joy Division. Oh wait, no, Krista Berg was Lady in Red.
Krista Berg was Lady in Red.
I can't. So Paul Young was Only When You Leave, right?
No, The Love of the Common People.
But wasn't it?
Yeah.
Only that
Yeah. There were a few.
Every time you go, like the Swans covering Joy Division. That was oh, okay. That's interesting. Paul Young, I was like, what the hell? What is this weirdness? It's one of those versions where it's like, I don't even know if it's bad or not. It's almost like terrible adjacent. Like I don't even because the truth is, I remember like my then girlfriend Margaret. Both of us were like horrified when he came out with that. Margaret's gone on to have a really interesting life. She used to play. We met. She lived in Rowayton, or actually Greenwich. I lived in Darien. We dated in the early '80s, and now she's the guitar player with Wire, and she was PJ Harvey's guitar player. Yeah, so that's interesting. But I remember when that came out, and both of us were like, "This is terrible," but it's also kind of not terrible. Like it's very confused. Like some songs are just straight up terrible. Like We Built a City on Rock and Roll, terrible. You know, Kokomo by the Beach Boys, terrible. Like not one redeeming note in the entire song. This, I guarantee you, if you were like exhausted in an airport in Italy catching like a 6 a.m. flight and that came on, you would get emotional. And you're like, you would almost like, kind of like I heard a remix of My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion. Granted, I was very drunk at the time. I was in the bodega on, I think, Pitt Street, buying like those little mini Budweisers. And I heard this remix and I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I really want to hate Celine Dion and I really want to hate My Heart Will Go On. But this remix was at 3 a.m. in the bodega, sounded great. So I would say that might not be the best choice for a truly terrible cover version. Keep in mind, it is terrible. I'm just saying it confuses me because if it wasn't Joy Division, it would actually be kind of a nice version.
Well, I feel like so I remember when I first heard the Paul Young version, I was in England on my punk rock grand tour, and like I was watching like a BBC show, like a talk show or something, and then the song came on at the end of the show, like over the credits, and I'd never heard before, and I was so offended. I was so angry. I was like, it freaked me out. And then I was like, you know what freaks me out the most? I mean, there's so many elements. Number one, the biggest one is he misunderstands the whole point of the song. Completely. I
mean, I can think of covers versions that are really offensive. And this one, I don't know why. I hate to say this. I have a 98% contempt for it and a 2% like, oh, okay.
Well, it is a cover of one of your favorite songs of all time, if not your favorite.
It's actually my least favorite Joy Division song.
Is that true?
Yeah, like as far as Joy Division's oeuvre is concerned, like this is definitely, like, I think it's a really nice song, but like it's not one of my favorite Joy Division songs.
I think Disorder is my favorite Joy Division song.
I think everything off of Closer and Unknown Pleasures is better than this. Lyrically, it's a but all I'm saying is my weird perspective is I don't have categorical condemnation of it. I have almost categorical condemnation of it, attenuated by a little part of me that thinks, you know what? In the right context, I could find myself almost liking this. Like I said, imagine yourself emotionally depleted. You're on a ferry going from, I don't know, like someplace in Italy to someplace in Greece. You've just had a terrible breakup. It's 6 a.m. and you're just like, you're sick and unhappy. And you hear that and you're like, oh, how is this perfect? Whereas Kokomo by the Beach Boys will never be perfect. It's the worst song ever recorded and written in human history. Like, I hate that. Oh, or Where You Go To My Lovely by Peter Sarstedt, a song that John Peel and I agreed on, the worst song ever recorded.
Oh, but did you know that Love Will Tear Us Apart was a response to
Captain, it's Neil.
Love Will Keep Us Together.
Who are you talking to, Matt?
I know.
I have a poster of New Order's first show, and it says New Order were Joy Division. They spelled it wrong.
Amazing. So I always felt the original was like, we're really being ripped apart, and this is it. And being ripped apart, we're going into the unknown, and it's probably bad. Right.
Well, it's also in the original. What makes it so special is how descriptive it is. You know, it is like a John Cheever short story. You'd referenced John Cheever earlier, the greatest American writer. But there's like an unflinching vulnerability to it. Like it's so clear-eyed in the description of how this couple has fallen apart, and it's poetic in its sort of like unflinching look at that. And you're right, the Paul Young version. Also, in my mind, I just see the video.
Ian Curtis has been dead for 3 years.
Didn't 979, 80? Okay,
80.
Thereabouts.
Anyway, so to my mind,
See, that's my spotty knowledge. I'm like, I know that Level Tear Us Apart was inspired by a Captain Tennille song. I don't know exactly when Ian Curtis died.
I feel like Paul Young's thing is like, a relationship fall apart, but man, we're going to make it now. We're going to be okay.
But it was the 80s. It was like, pink gels on lights and music videos and hair blown by big fans. Like it was, and he was a product of that time.
So the other thing that bothers me about it is the cool thing about Level Tear Us Apart, the original, to me, is you go to like every detail, and this is partly like Martin Hannett and his production, but like we're coming out of punk rock, right? And what's the first sound you hear on Level Tear Us Apart by Joy Division? An acoustic guitar.
I don't know if it's an acoustic guitar, but it's a very acoustic-y sound. That opening chord?
No,
sure it wasn't like just like a hollow body electric. I feel like Martin Hannett would just hate acoustic guitars. Like I feel like I envision like someone showing up in the studio with an acoustic guitar for Martin Hannett and him being like John Belushi in Animal House.
Smashing it.
Yeah, like like when I think of Martin Hannett, I think of a certain ratio. I think of ESG. I think of Joy Division. I don't think of like acoustic guitar, but
But anyway, what I liked about it was it smashed my preconception of what was going to be on a song like that. And then if you think about like the synthesizer, the one note, we were coming out of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and yes, people forget this. Like a one note synthesizer line was the equivalent of a Ramones bar chord progression. It was like a complete fuck you to the excess of prog.
Yeah, it was not Rick Wakeman.
Right.
And keep in mind, I love the Yes.
Me too.
Like Yes records with Rick Wakeman are flawless. So I'm not in any way maligning Rick Wakeman or prog rock, but you're right. There's contextually a one note detuned synth line on a broken old analog synthesizer. It definitely is. As far as synthesizers can be punk rock, it's pretty punk rock.
And then I also thought that Joy Division and New Order always had the coolest drum machine sounds. Coolest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they sort of made me think about drum machines in a new way.
Yeah.
And so then I get to this Paul Young version, and it's the most cod-awful. So in all the ways that the elements of the Joy Division song are great and transcend.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. All I'm saying is I personally have a 2% carved out space for the fact that in the right circumstances or the right context, that Paul Young version might have emotional weight to it. 2%. And like I said, I've given my examples, like the ferry on, the Greek ferry, the Italian airport, you're in St. Petersburg and your flight has been canceled and you're waiting for your next flight and you're in the bathroom and you hear this version, you're like, oh, in this moment, I like this song. That's all I'm saying. You can't argue with subjective.
So part of why we want to kind of investigate bad music is as the society, we have a sort of a meta relationship with bad music. Like bad music, for example, is often the locus for racism, the locus for stupid ideas about society, more so than like having investigated it.
And sometimes bad music can be the product of good people.
Yes.
Will.i.am is a very nice guy. He also wrote My Humps.
There you go. Which is fairly memorable considering his catalog. Bad, like you were saying, it's like 98% the worst song you've ever heard, and 2%, I kind of get it. And that tension is interesting to me.
Deep down, I can't even admit it, but like my two of my least favorite songs of all time, Kokomo and We Built This City on Rock and Roll, I love to hate them. Like I revel. Like it's like a dog finding another dog's poop on the lawn and rolling around in it. Like I love hating those songs, and I truly hate them. But there's like a visceral satisfaction in hating them.
But if you think about like We Built This City, like that
I don't
song,
like to because it's just. And and it's also contextually the fact that it's Jefferson Airplane, like Surrealistic Pillow, one of the greatest records ever made, and then like a few years later, it's like, what the fuck are you people doing? Like We Built This City on Rock and Roll, like.
To me, that was like a beacon. It flushed everything good about the 60s down the toilet, sonically and otherwise. And then it was pointing towards, it was like the true lowest common denominator. And so what disturbs me about the Level Tear Us Apart is merging the lowest common denominator with something so pure, with something so complex that yeah, it's weird. It's funny. I listened to Level Terrace Apart. I kind of wish like Frank Sinatra had covered it.
Well, Tony Wilson was trying to get Ian to sing more like Frank Sinatra.
And that was actually the croon, like, and it's really on Closer. The croon is evolved, and that was also anti-punk rock. Do you know what I mean? That was going against. Now it had roots in Iggy Pop. It had roots, obviously, in Jim Morrison. Both. It was counterintuitive to what was happening, and therefore it made it new. I don't know. And again, I love Bad Drum Machines. I love. There's things I love about the Paul Young version in other music.
Maybe it's also that sonically the Paul Young version it sonically reminds me of a wonderful song, Goodbye Horses by Q Lazarus. It's the when in Silence of the Lambs, when Buffalo Bob dances in front of the mirror with his penis tucked between his legs. It's a wonderful song, and it feels like it's using the same drum machine, the same synth pad. So I feel like there's a sonic familiarity that I kind of like. So
I guess that's the thing. It's like, you know the term cod reggae? Have you ever heard that term? It means like the most fake, phony version of reggae.
Mm-hmm. Like Dire Maker.
Which is a great version. Yes.
No, Dire Maker is the only bad Led Zeppelin song.
Yes.
Arguably.
Like every choice in that Paul Young song was the most obvious choice. And every choice in the Joy Division song is the least obvious choice.
Sure. I would just say that if you guys are going to go down this strange cultural rabbit hole of finding music to hate, you have to also allow yourself the space to sort of like grudgingly love these things as well. That's why you can never do Peter Sarstedt, Where Do You Go To My Lovely, because that's just 100% contemptible. But like you have to like leave just that little bit of space for like My Humps, which is one of the worst songs recorded ever. But everyone involved, they're nice people. And they've done some good things, and so it's just like carving out that space so it's not just a monolithic approach to terrible music.
I read a New Yorker article, and it described a psychological state, I think it's called asagnophobia, where you are completely aware that you're ill and fucked up, and then in complete denial of it at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel that way about this song and also bad music in general. Like, there's really bad music that is very important to my life, but it's sort of assuming that it's just the wallpaper and it's in the background. Like, I don't know. But there's something also lazy about just being like, that's a guilty pleasure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, Paul Young, Level Terrace Apart is not a guilty pleasure, but I just, like I said, it's possible that in the right circumstances, it could resonate with me, as terrible as it is.
And we're going to end with Morris speaking with Arthur Baker in a most unfiltered Disinfect exclusive.
So, as you know, we recorded an episode, Matt and I, on the cover version that Paul Young did of Joy Division's Level Terrace Apart.
So you're actually doing a 2-part on Level Terrace Apart.
It's so bad. We've got 2 parts.
That's awesome, you know? I just think it's funny because obviously I know Hookie and Barney, and I wonder what they'd have to say about the version, you know?
We're really honored to have Arthur Baker with us. Producer, DJ, filmmaker, restaurateur. Am I missing anything to your accolades?
Lap swimmer. I've been swimming a lot of laps these days.
Not a lap dancer, you're a lap swimmer.
Lap swimmer, okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. It's a lap swimmer. I think you've summed it up.
And then, for those of you who don't know some of Arthur's work, he produced Planet Rock, Afrika Bambaataa, the seminal electro, hip-hop dance track, which is legendary. Walking on Sunshine by Rockers Revenge, again legendary. And IOU by Freeze. Amongst other things. And really from there, Arthur, that's how you met New Order, right? You came to their attention that way?
Well, I met New Order through, I think, Planet Rock and Walking on Sunshine were both out before I worked with them. And this friend of mine, Michael Schamberg, who you probably knew from New York, but he was running Factory Records New York, and he introduced us and thought that we could work well together, and we went in the studio, and in one sort of 3-day session, we recorded Confusion and the music of Thieves Like Us, and it was pretty productive couple of days, and through the years I've worked with them, and I'm very good friends with the band, and so I've done remixes for them and DJ'd for them, and I'm friends with both Hooky and with Barney and Steve and Jillian, so which isn't a common occurrence these days, because they don't really speak other than through lawyers. We did those tracks in New York, Unique Studios in New York, which was, and we did some of the work in my studio, Shakedown. So we recorded in New York, finished Confusion there, shot the sort of the seminal video of Confusion where I'm driving around New York in a cab, not a limo. Yeah. Everyone always thought it was a limo. It wasn't. It was a yellow cab. And so as I said, I've stayed friends with them all these years, and still working with them.
Which were the clubs that which was the clubs that was shot in?
It was shot at the Funhouse and Paradise Garage.
Oh, wow.
They go up the stairs at Paradise Garage or down the stairs, and they did a gig at Paradise Garage. And in the Funhouse, you see them sort of getting patted down and going into the, by security and going into the club, and then they end up in the booth with Jelly Bean, and I'm walking through the crowd, and it's actually one of the few times that club scene was really captured on film. It's unfortunate there isn't a lot of footage from back then, but it's used a lot because of that, and it's been used in many documentaries. I'm using it in mine right now. They were just filming as kids were dancing. It wasn't like, obviously the bits of New Order going in the booth, me going in the booth, giving Jelly Bean the reel, it was done, but it was done during an actual night. It wasn't done, Yeah, it was filmed live at probably on, I think it was a Friday night at the Funhouse.
And the garage?
Thing is, we've been looking for any footage, leftover footage, and no one's ever been able to find it. So much like the footage in Beat Street from the Roxy, there were great footage, but it was all used in the film, and we haven't found any outtakes on that either. So, which is really unfortunate, because there was great footage there.
And you've continued your relationship with New Order.
I've DJ'd for Hooky, and he's played on a lot of things I've worked on for my wife's fashion label and stuff. So yeah, we're all really good friends. So.
And when did you first hear Love Will Tear Us Apart? Do you remember what?
I heard it when it came out, and I heard it. I actually got it. I was working in Jersey, in Long Island City, actually, at a Cardinal One Stop, which was a distributor for all types of labels, and they had a copy of it, and I actually still have it to this day. And I hadn't heard it, but I got a copy, took it home, and listened to it, and I really liked it, because when I started working with New Order, I wasn't all that familiar with the group, and everyone was really, "Oh, you're going to work with New Order." People were super impressed by that, which I, they weren't really super on my radar, but they when I heard the track, I really loved it, and to this day I love it. And I've actually I did a remix about 20 years ago
of Love Will Tear Us Apart.
Yeah, that came out on Warner's, and I've recently done a remix, which is an amazing remix. It will never come out because the group doesn't want it to come out, but I played it. I did a live stream Hacienda thing that a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah, recently.
Yeah, and I played it, and I got such great feedback. I got so many people calling and going, how great the remix was. So it is a song I really love, and the first remix I did was not that, I wouldn't say it was great, but the one I did about 3 years ago, I think it's great. And I think it captures the essence of the song, but makes it really danceable in a sort of, I don't know, underground way. But whenever I play it out, it really gets a great reaction. I played it at the Hacienda. Well, at the Hacienda party in last year when I was in Manchester for one of those Hacienda parties, and there were like 10,000 people there. It was amazing. And I played it and people went off crazy. So yeah, it's a good remix.
Obviously the track is a classic. So
yeah, well, it's beyond a classic.
Yeah.
It's just to me, it's one of the best records of all time. You know, it rates up there with some of the Stones things, the Who. I mean, I think I really hear a lot of Who elements in the original. You know, I think the John Entwistle thing, Hookie's a real fan of his. And I actually was with Hookie and Barney when the only time they met John Entwistle. We were in London, and Hookie was like super shy about going up to meet him, you know. So it was, and afterwards I said, oh yeah, Joy Division, Love Will Tear Us Apart at the beginning, and it's very much like the Who, you know, da-ding, da-ding, Pinball Wizard type of vibe. So musically, it's really influenced by the Who, for sure. Which next time you listen to it, listen to the beginning. Yeah, you know, it's really it's very Pete Townsend and Entwistle vibe. Whether it was intentional or not, but he said that Hookie had told me Entwistle was one of his favorite bass players. So I would think that had some sort of influence.
And why else do you think it's probably one of the greatest?
Lyrically, it's amazing. Yeah. Lyrically, the vocals great. I mean, it's a pop song. It's angst, pop song, love. I mean, it just has all the elements in it, and it's danceable, and it's rock. You know, it's just got it's all there. It's all there. There's, you know, it definitely isn't the type of track that you should try to cover. You know, to be honest.
Yes.
Yeah, so I always rated it from the day I got the record. I always rated it as an amazing record. I mean, you know, and Joy Division as an amazing band. For the same people to have been in Joy Division and New Order, like two groups that sort of really changed music. You don't find, I don't think anyone else has done that, who lost a lead singer and then continued and started a new band and had another band as influential. So I think they're super unique.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think probably the only band that lost a lead singer and then had more success with a new lead singer was Genesis.
Yeah. That's they had success for sure after. Yeah. So I would say New Order and Genesis. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I prefer New Order, so. Although I like Peter Gabriel a lot.
Yeah, no, I think Genesis made some good records, man. I mean, you could say that they did, you know, continue and made great, you know, great records, you know.
Yeah, they certainly had more success.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, we're here to talk about the cover by Paul Young. And do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about your relationship with Paul? Because you worked with him,
I mean,
right?
I actually love Paul. I think he's a great soul singer, you know. And I first heard about Paul actually because he kept IOU from going to number one in 1983 with, I think it was Wherever I Lay My Hat. Mm-hmm. And that was number one all summer in 83, and IOU was number two. So I always, you know, I wasn't really happy with that because I would have loved to have a number one with IOU.
Yeah.
But we never met. We didn't meet until I was doing music for this movie, Fried Green Tomatoes. And it was going to be an entire album of pretty much of covers. And I thought Paul would be great to do What Becomes of the Broken Hearted. So we worked on it in L.A., and I had Steve Ferrone, and I think David Palmer was on that, and I used some great musicians, and Tommy Farragher worked on it, and it ended up becoming a really big hit. It was his last big hit in America. Right. It was a top 20 pop. and it was number 2 adult contemporary. And this was all without a video. So it was really actually, it was pretty unheard of at that time because, we were trying to get MCA to do a video from the movie, and it just didn't, for some reason, they never did. And I really believe if it had a video featuring footage from the movie with him doing a little singing in it, I think it probably would have went top 10 pop because it really got tons of radio play. But then I didn't really work with him or see him for, maybe till 2012 when I had this idea to do a label that would just do covers with iconic vocalists and just sort of, that was the concept. And I contacted him because I had the relationship, and we ended up doing an album of Stax covers, and which I put out on my own label. The album's called Good Thing, and came out great. I was listening to it today again, and he kills Big Bird. He kills Your Good Thing's Gonna End. He killed really great, true to the originals, not very far out, but he sings them really well. So, basically that came out in 2016, and we actually did maybe 25,000, 30,000 albums, which, isn't bad in nowadays, but, and he sounded great. So, that's my relationship with Paul,
Yeah, and obviously, I think Paul is an amazing singer too. But just the problem that we were having is really with his, first of all, the decision to cover Love Will Tear Us Apart, and then his actual execution of it. What do you think of his? What goes wrong for you?
That they did it. That was what went wrong. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. And the thing is, you couldn't. I keep thinking maybe if he did it in a different way, if he did it acoustically. I'm just trying to, when I listened to it again, I was like, what could he have done? Well, the changes in the melody were horrible. Okay. There's a lot of changes in the melody, which I'm sure the producer told him to do. I don't think he would have just went off and done it on his own from having worked with him. Paul is available to be produced, if you know what I mean. If you give him an idea, he'll work with it. So I'm sure, I'm sure it wasn't his idea to do it. I mean, I'm pretty sure. And then, basically it just was not the type of, there are plenty of songs he can cover, and that just isn't, Love Will Tear Us Apart isn't one of them, because, you could, I keep thinking of, what was the guy, Phil Flowers? Who was the guy who did Wonderwall? But here's the thing. Bowie could have redone Love Will Tear Us Apart, and he could have redone it in a crooner way. He could have, and he could have probably sold it, because you can hear him doing it like he would have done, like Andy Warhol or some of the songs from the Changes album. You could hear him do it, and he possibly could have sold it, because what he would have done with the melody would have been different, not try to make it pop. And what they try to do with Love Will Tear Us Apart, it seems like to take it poppier in some way, or, not even solely. It's just sort of, it wasn't a good idea. And I'm sure Paul, doesn't particularly like to hear it or want people to hear it, But
it's interesting because, when I've told people that we were talking about Paul Young's version of Love Will Tear Us Apart, a lot of people who I respect musically have told me that they love this version.
Wow.
So it's kind of, it's like, oh no, I love that song. I love his version. It's fantastic.
Are you interviewing any of those people?
No, we're not.
Why not? See, that's not fair. I'm doing this because I'm going to be the voice of sticking up for Paul because I think Paul's a great singer. I just think Paul's strength is soulful and emotional, soulful. And I almost think, well, maybe they thought because of the title that he could do something. And I don't know if he was trying to make it like a Hall & Oates thing. Could Daryl Hall have done it better? Love Will Tear Us Apart. Probably not. I mean, it's just not a song to be messed with. I actually did a cover of it, though, which with this girl named Miranda Stanton. And I did a cover with her, which you should try to find because maybe that will make it on your show too. It was on a New Order Joy Division compilation album, and I actually used some of the original stems from the song, but changed it up, and it's a bit more almost country. It isn't country and western, but you see, the thing is, having a female sing "Love Will Tear Us Apart" makes more sense than another guy trying to do it because you can't match Ian's version. But with a woman, I never try to do covers of iconic songs like that with the same gender. It's sort of, you would think that if someone does a great song and then you try to have a female do a New Order song, that sort of works. And I've done that too. But the bottom line is, it just didn't work, and it's pretty bad.
And what about the instrumentation on there as well? Because I mean, you've got Pino Palladino playing bass.
Yeah, but he played on all his records,
greatest.
so he just used his guys, which to think about it, it sort of makes sense in an A&R guy world. Yeah, that's such a great song. It is a great song. I'll just get these great music, but what made that song great is it isn't like musicianship. It's like a group who play really well together, merging, and then it's just like it's magic. You can't recreate magic with studio music. Yeah, and it's very simple.
The keyboard line is simple. The guitar is.
Trust me,
acoustic.
I have the parts. I have the stems, so I know how simple it is. I've listened to it many times. Stripped down just the bass, but it all it's like the sum of the parts are much or what makes the magic of rock and roll. Think of some Stones records that I've been able to mix and listen to. It's like the tempo is all over the place. It's sloppy. Charlie Watts is not in time throughout, but the combination of it is just amazing. So it's just what makes rock and roll, and it's a different mentality.
And Love Will Tear Us Apart was recorded at Strawberry Studios in Manchester.
Yeah.
Stockport, I should say.
Yeah, in Stockport. Yeah,
geographically correct.
Yeah, and Hooky would be happy if you got it right.
Right. Right. Well, I grew up in Stockport.
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. Were you ever at the studio? Or was it
I used to walk past it. I was a kid.
Yeah.
I'm younger than you, Arthur.
Yeah, I know that.
So,
I know that.
Cause I was a big 10cc fan, so they were, that was their studio, and
I know Kevin pretty well, but I don't know Lowell at all. I worked with them on the Sun City video. They did the editing for the Sun City video, most of it. I worked on this anti-apartheid record called Sun City, which I produced with little Steven Van Zandt, and it came out in 1985. And it basically was a song. Sun City was it was sort of like the Vegas of South Africa, in a separate country that wasn't really a separate country, called Botswana, I think it's pronounced. And basically, a lot of artists would go there thinking it wasn't in South Africa, and they played, but it was in South Africa. So we made a record that Stephen wrote that was an anti-apartheid record, and he used Sun City as the sort of the symbol of the apartheid, and it grew from a little idea to at my studio, and it grew from like Will Downing doing the vocal on the demo to everyone literally we had the best crew of people. But what made it amazing is we had like Miles Davis and Big Youth and Gil Scott-Heron and Bruce Springsteen and Pete Townsend played guitar on it, and Ringo Starr played. I mean, literally, it was unbelievable who we ended up getting to do it. It was just.
It was the "We Are the World" of protest songs, basically.
And it was actually it morphed into an album with Peter Gabriel. He had a track on it, and Miles Davis had a track we made, and U2 wrote "Silver and Gold" for the album. So it was like a whirlwind. Like I worked on it for 8 months, and we did a video which Jonathan Demme directed the live shooting, and we shot in Washington Square Park and everything, but he was really busy, so he couldn't really edit it. He directed all the footage. And then we got Godley and Cream, who were doing videos all over the world. So they came into town for 3 nights and to edit, and I had to buy them the biggest bag of skunk I could find, and they just, went to it. But then we had the screening, the world premiere on MTV was meant to be on Monday night, and there it's Sunday afternoon, 6:00, and we're in there, and we're not done anywhere near done, literally on the edit, and I'm there with this guy named Hart Perry, who is also another film guy, and they look at me and go, oh well, our flight's in 2 hours. I'm like, what? Your flight's in 2 hours? What do you mean? No, we got to go. We have a flight. We can't stay. And I go, but we're not done. They're like, you guys finish it. So me and Hart stayed up. Steven Van Zandt was on the schedule. He'd leave the studio at 8:00. He didn't do the all night. He didn't do drugs. He didn't do the all night thing. So me and Hart called some guy to come over to bring us something to keep us up, and we worked literally all night. And so if you watch the end of that video, which it's online, at the end it all breaks out into a huge party, which is what happened at Washington Square Park. But I put in things like Lou Reed dancing around in circles and Bono kissing one of the fat boys, and just sort of I put in all this stuff. Me and Hart put in this stuff that just made it really fun, but really chaotic, but in a cool way. And Steve gets there, and we don't even have time to do anything. He gets there, and we have to go walk it over to Les Garland at MTV. We walked from the studio over to Les Garland, and that was it. And that night, it went on at 8:00, world premiere. And think about 85, MTV was the biggest thing in music, and they just threw it on, and it was the thing that we had sort of edited. So it was pretty funny. But, Godley and Cream did the majority, and they did the Black Fist and all the different things that now look sort of, look like really simple to do, but at the time they were cutting edge, and it was it's a great video, great song, and really we ended up raising close to $1 million for the Africa Fund, and it also just made people aware of apartheid, but apartheid in general, because we did actually a making of Sun City doc that was a 30-minute doc that MTV screened. I mean, this is a time when they weren't even playing Michael Jackson records. I mean, it was really, they weren't playing black music pretty much at all, and the fact that we got Bambaataa and Grandmaster Flash were in the video. Curtis Blow, Run DMC, they were all in the video. So we actually broke the apartheid at MTV also. So it was an interesting time, and an interesting project. But Paul Young wasn't on that.
No, Christmas time.
The Christmas one. Yeah. Do they know it's Christmas?
Yeah, and he sang the opening line.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Which is a record. We are definitely.
You are.
We will definitely be dissecting. Disinfecting.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Because it is not only one of the worst charity records of all time, but it's got to be one of the worst holiday records of all time.
Yeah, but look at how well it sold.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, just the subject matter.
Yeah. It's pretty.
There won't be snow in Africa. This
I know. It's a bit pretentious, huh?
So, any more thoughts on the cover of Love Will Tear Us Apart?
I don't know. I just think I did listen to it, and I did try to give it a shot, and it just is bad. It's one of those records that you would think, and you mentioned it, and you would think it was somewhat drug induced, but because to leave the studio thinking that was good, I mean, I've had some records that I've done that because of the drugs, I really thought they were great, and then you listen back even a month later, not years later, you get a new perspective on it.
Right.
So I don't know. I just think it's I'm sure it's all been said. It's just wasn't a good idea, and whoever's idea it was. But who was the A&R guy at the time?
It was just a classic case of an A&R guy who was doing too many drugs and thought it was a good idea.
I would think that could be the case, and then he was able to convince Paul. Who is the guy?
I don't know.
Who is the guy?
We will have to find that person out.
I don't know. It's pretty bad.
Thank you for listening to this special edition of Disinfect. We will see you soon to air out some more of music's worst songs. Thank you and good night.
Good night. Thank you for listening.
Disinfect was created by Morris Bernstein and Matt Deal. Produced by Sean Lewis and Esther Yoon. Theme music by Jeremy Clark, a.k.a. Mr. 66. Artwork by Bill McMullen, a.k.a. Millions Make Millions. If you want to tell us how much you love or hate Disinfect, or wish to purchase an extremely overpriced commemorative mug, oven mitt, or t-shirt, please find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and disinfectpodcast.com. You can also contact us at info@disinfectpodcast.com. Please like, subscribe, donate, all that shit. Thank you, and see you next episode to disinfect more of music's worst songs. Wherever fine podcasts are shilled. Copyright Giant Step 2020, and whatever other necessary boilerplate legal mumbo jumbo blah 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 you hear at the end of your favorite podcasts.